Hey folks, just thought I'd try a bit of a walking video, and today I want to talk about your problems. Now, there was a period in my life where everything was a problem, and as a result I got terribly depressed, sad, anxious, and it was like I just put my head in the sand about those problems, and that in itself is possibly the worst response to a problem that you can have. And I think it's many people's, not everyone's, but many people's default. So my next stage was to in essential devaluing your problems, whether they be musical or in your business or in your life or in your work or in your relationships. In that case you're devaluing them because you're not solving them, and you're just throwing your hands up and saying, well, they can't be solved, so I'm just going to sit on this sofa and watch Netflix instead, or something like that. So then the next stage of my relationship with my problems was that I decided, well, this is no use, I'm not solving anything, things are getting worse by taking this very negative approach to problems. I thought, well, how about if I reframe my problems as challenges? And that was actually very effective. I thought, okay, actually, if I say, well, I don't have any problems, I only have challenges, there is no such thing as a problem, there is only a challenge. I actually found that very useful for many years. In fact, it's exactly what I used to teach. I didn't use the word problems for a very long time, which, as I said, I think is much better than burying your head in the sand and just kind of getting depressed about them and throwing your hands up and giving up. But there is a problem with that second stage of problem solving, if you like, which is that there is a certain amount of hand waving going on. Oh, no, this isn't a problem. It doesn't actually, one of the things that it does is, it's literally 100%, maybe 200%, whatever that means, better than the alternative of just getting depressed about it and giving up. But what you're actually doing there is you're not putting your head in the sand, you're turning away from them. It gives you this sense that you're unwilling to look at them. Not 100%, but it definitely does that. So now where I'm at with problem solving is by saying to myself, no, this isn't a challenge. It's challenging to solve the problems, but the problem is a problem. Let's call a spade a spade. This is a problem, and I'm not afraid of them. I'm not turning away from them. I can solve it. It's almost like the approach that I'm now taking is, as it's a problem, it is soluble. I can solve it. All I need to do is clearly identify what the actual problem is. Now, what's interesting here, because I've been coaching this for probably about over a year now, this particular way of doing things, is that when I ask a client or a team member, so what's the problem, they will almost always come back with a solution, or a solution in disguise. So if I say to a client who's struggling with a particular part of a piece of music, what's the problem here? Often they'll say, I really need to do this. So I really need to add a bass line, or I really need to put, brighten the hi-hat or something. That is not a problem. That's a solution, obviously. Okay. Why is just talking about solutions a problem in itself and not focusing on the problem? Well, think about it like this. I can come up with any number of ideas, literally an infinite number of ideas of what to do next. Okay, and success is knowing what to do next. In other words, choosing something to do, a finite action to take in this piece of music to improve it. If I only focus on solutions, well, I need to do this, I need to do that, and I need to do the other. In the absence of knowing what the actual problem is, what I'm essentially doing is I'm focusing on the infinite number of ideas that I might have. And what ends up happening, and this might be, you might recognize this, is what ends up happening is that your creative process starts turning into it's a very random crapshoot, basically. It's almost like you're spinning the wheel. Now, I love, pulling the arm of the one-armed bandit and hoping that ding ding ding, you'll get a 3 sevens or something. Now, I'm all for leveraging luck and randomness in the creative process, particularly at the start, particularly when you're splurging. In fact, I've even got a t-shirt showing that I'm all for that. I made one. But when you're talking about something that exists and you're attempting to improve it, while you can leverage randomness, wouldn't it be nice to actually know that you were actually solving a problem with the random idea you've just had? So how do you do that? Well, instead of coming up with infinite solutions, what you first want to do is identify what the problem is that these solutions would solve. Why? Well, when you think about it, when you look at just solutions, which are literally infinite, never ending, if you shift your focus to a problem exists, a solution doesn't. Right? So that means that they are more finite. Now, this isn't to say that we can ever reach a state where there will be no problems. Okay, so they are in a sense still infinite. But if this is possible to say, and I think some physicists would say it is, and some physicists would say it isn't, they are less infinite, right? In that there is something that exists, not something that doesn't exist, something that exists, and you hear that there's a problem, or that you see that there's a problem if you're not talking about music, yeah? So therefore it's something that exists, and therefore it's easier for you to actually determine what to do next. If you just have a list of random infinite options, I don't know, why is this better than that? What do you end up doing in that situation? Using reference tracks, going to YouTube to watch another tutorial, buying a bit of gear. Just end up randomly doing stuff which you think, hope, fingers crossed, waiting for inspiration type things. Yeah. When you actually get good at identifying the problems, now you've got something that exists and that is to a certain extent finite. Yeah, so it's a much easier thing to process. Now, what's interesting about this whole area, let's see how much time I've spent. What's interesting about this whole area is that I've been training my team on this. So at the end of every week, I ask them to identify what's the biggest problem in the business that they're experiencing. And again, it's super interesting that it is actually very hard to not frame a problem in terms of solution. So we don't have this process. Well, we don't have a certain process for engaging with people. Well, what problem is that solving? Yeah, or would it solve? Yeah, we don't have a big enough audience. Well, a big audience is a solution. What problem would that solve? And one of the things I've realised from coaching the team and coaching the many clients I have through this is that you'll know it's a useful problem which is going to give you bring you more progress and allow you to know what to do next when it's not based upon something that's missing, right? So if I say, what's the problem? It doesn't have a baseline. That's not a problem. That's a potential solution to a problem. So maybe the problem is that maybe the problem is that got an evil dog. So maybe the problem is that the baseline provides, a baseline would provide drive. So maybe the problem is that it's lacking, the tune is lacking momentum or something, or that there's a whole frequency range not being covered. It's not the baseline is the solution, and the benefit of doing this, well, there's many benefits. One is that it causes you to listen more carefully, to be able to listen first, then actually analyze. Okay, so what is the actual problem, which then allows you to realize there are multiple solutions to any given problem. And often when I've helped people, coached people through this, they've realized that many of the things that they thought were a problem aren't in fact a problem. So it saves time as well. I mean, of course it saves time, because when you get good at clearly articulating the problem, you're not randomly, rolling the dice to solve it. Yeah, you're not looking for certainty in areas which probably aren't going to help you that much, like in terms of finishing this track, like YouTube tutorials or a reference track. You're actually developing an incredibly valuable skill, not only for your music but for your broader life. So this is something that I'm super obsessed about at the moment, because the other interesting thing about this whole area is that when you get deep into it, you actually realise that it's very hard to articulate a problem without there being a solution embedded within it. So this is the final benefit. If you really want to get great at problem solving, all you really need to do is get great at articulating the problem. Because when you've articulated it, a great solution usually presents itself.